What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Luke Dawkins 01 YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the newest released in Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that is Captain America: Brave New World. I actually saw this movie probably a little over a week ago, but what I tend to do, especially with Marvel movies, because we tend to have a very strong gut reaction to things based on our expectation, I sat on it for the past week. I wanted to make sure that the reaction and review that I gave to you guys was not influenced based on my expectations walking into the movie, maybe if that met or did not meet my expectations. So I tend to prefer to sit on movies before I actually give my reaction to them. Overall, I've heard a lot of things about this movie. I've heard some people like it, some people hate it. I've heard a lot more people say they hate it than pretty much anything else I've heard about this movie. That being said, I don't think this movie was bad. Do I think this is going to go down as a top... do I think this is going to go down as a top 25% upper echelon Marvel movie ever? No. Do I think it fits into the top 50% of Marvel movies? Yeah. I think that's fine. I think it's... I do think it's kind of mid. I don't think it's great. I don't think it's bad. I think it's that middle ground where you're like, I could watch this again, but I definitely have a handful of other Marvel movies I would prefer to watch again over this one. So with that being said, being that I do think after digesting it for a little while that this is a middle of the pack mid-Marvel movie, I give it an overall score of 7.5. I don't think it's a good enough movie to be an 8, but I also don't think it's as bad as people say, and in my opinion, it doesn't deserve to be bad enough that it's a 7. I am going to be going over a couple pros and cons with you in this video to kind of highlight and explain my reasoning for a 7.5. So, my first pro for this movie, and honestly, this could technically be the highlight of the movie if you think about it, it is our new MCU newcomer, Star Wars fandom extraordinaire, Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford did a great job in this movie. Obviously, he's taking over the role of General Thunderbolt Ross after the passing away of the original actor, and Harrison Ford did a tremendous job with this. He did a great job at displaying the intensity of General Thunderbolt Ross while also showing more of his personality aspects. The fact that he's a war general, how that affects his presidency in this movie. I think Harrison Ford did a great job at displaying the storytelling, especially given that it's a sort of a continuation of the Incredible Hulk movie that came out several years ago. Overall, I think you could easily say Harrison Ford is the best, if not bare minimum, at least one of the top 3 best qualities of this entire movie as a whole. When you begin to jump into his background, what motivated him in this movie, spoiler alert real quick, maybe skip forward a couple seconds if you wish to not be spoiled, how he jumped into tying into the heart attack, his reasoning behind getting those pills from the leader, his ties to, his daughter. I think he did a great job at portraying every single component of this character that honestly I wished to see in General Thunderbolt Ross, and I really hope we see more of Harrison Ford in the future, which I do feel like they teased, being that he is in The Raft. Hopefully they do not make Red Hulk a one-off character. Hopefully we see Harrison Ford again in the near future. My next biggest pro of this movie, and to me, I'm probably starting off with my top 2 pros right off the bat, and this kind of ties into my last one because it is technically the same character. I think they nailed the design aspect of the Red Hulk. He looked so good. He looked like the Hulk. He looks honestly like we wish the Hulk looked, right? Nobody really likes the current design of the Hulk, the whole Smart Hulk, Professor Hulk persona he has going on. We want to see savage, terrifying, muscle-bound Hulk. And dude, Red Hulk delivered on the design aspect of that. He looked amazing. He really did. If you want to be nitpicky, like if I were to give one critique of his design, I would say that I wish his eyes were yellow because that kind of ties into a more comic accurate look. But overall, I think they made the Red Hulk's design absolutely outstanding. Some people complained that we didn't get to see that design, but maybe for like a grand total of 5 minutes in that movie. And with as good of a design as it was, I can see why that is a complaint. Although I did expect Red Hulk to be the final kind of big fight of that movie. So being that it was kind of the last 5 minutes of the movie, I'm not that let down because truthfully that was kind of where my expectations were lying with that character anyway. But overall, A++ design for the Red Hulk. So at this point, even if you haven't seen the movie, you can pretty much suspect that the leader is going to be the main kind of background villain of the movie. He is the main villain, but given how well Red Hulk was executed on design-wise, the final fight being with Red Hulk, he can be looked at as the main villain, but overall, it is the leader as the main villain. The execution of him was great. I felt like he was the leader. He was very much an intellectual villain who was able to tear apart basically almost the entire U.S. government and military just through literally his intelligence. He was a fantastic execution of that character. There is a con to that character I will talk about, and maybe that the con's a little bit more obvious than the pro, but I will get to that later. Overall, I think how the leader went about his plan, the methods in which he took to brainwash with the phones and everything such as that with the song, I feel like they did a great job at executing the character of the leader as a whole. All right, my fourth pro is that I loved how much importance they placed on adamantium in this movie. I was so worried that they were going to shy away from that. Like, oh, we're just going to give you a little tease and, make you think of Wolverine, but we're really going to tell this later on in another movie. No, they really highlighted the importance of adamantium. They set it up to be more useful and more valuable than vibranium, which I think is so sick that they did that. Obviously, if you're a Wolverine fan, if you're a Marvel fan, you love the concept of adamantium, because that means eventually we are going to get a MCU Wolverine, which I'm sure all of us are very much looking forward to. I love that they, talked about Celestial Island finally, after so much time has passed since the Eternals movie. Someone finally talked about the giant thing sticking up out of the ocean, the giant celestial that literally was emerging from the ocean. They finally talked about it again. And on top of that, they showed that countries were vying to get to that resource so they could farm adamantium. That was awesome. I loved how much stress they put on that precious metal, because it's just an awesome aspect to throw into a Marvel movie as a whole. And next up, and my final pro for this movie, some people had issue with it. As a person who dramatically loves the Hulk as a character, my final pro is that they tied in concepts and storylines from the Incredible Hulk movie that happened way long ago, with Edward Norton playing the Hulk. Finally. I feel like that movie was almost kind of left as a time capsule, so to speak. No one really talked about it. No one tied really anything into it other than us seeing the Abomination. That's pretty much the only thing that we saw from that movie for forever. I love that they brought back Betty. I love that they talked about that movie a little bit and some of the actions that happened to in it. Obviously, Mr. Blue also becoming the leader ties into that movie very well. Overall, I just really like that they finally made a callback to a movie that at first wasn't well received by the Marvel community, but I think as time went on, we kind of tend to like that movie more and more. I liked the movie when it first came out because I was a kid and my favorite character was the Hulk, so seeing everything tie together was a nice plus for me. And now that we're done with the pros, we're going to be moving on to the cons list, and this might honestly be my top con of the movie. It is a more picky take, I will say, but as someone who does love comic accuracy, I did not like the execution of the Red Hulk. What I mean by that is they essentially just made him Hulk. Obviously, Hulk and Red Hulk are two distinct characters. They are not the same thing. They have a similar design, they have a similar power set, but they are two different characters. Essentially what they did is they gave us Hulk and just reskinned him as Red in this movie. My biggest complaint might have been that, because number one, when Thunderbolt Ross changes into the Red Hulk, he is supposed to continue to be General Thunderbolt Ross. There is no alter ego. There's nothing in there that would suggest a Bruce Banner Hulk separate entity, separate personality situation. When he turns into the Red Hulk, he is still General Thunderbolt Ross. He keeps his intelligence, he keeps his sanity, he keeps his tactical reasoning, and they did not do that in this movie. They made him a barbaric, hulking monster, just like normal Hulk. And I feel like that's not doing justice to what that character actually is. On top of that, not only do I think that they did not do a good job in showing that they are the same personality, I don't think they did a good job in highlighting the power difference, the power set difference between Hulk and Red Hulk. Obviously, one of the most famous things about the Hulk as a character is the fact that the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. That's one of the biggest components of his character as a whole. The angrier the Hulk gets, the stronger he gets. Red Hulk is similar with that, but also dramatically different. The angrier the Red Hulk gets, the more radiation, the more heat he emits. He almost has like a fiery aspect of his character. He emits heat, he emits that kind of radiation that burns things at the touch. That was nowhere to be seen. When he initially transformed into the Red Hulk, it looked like there was like some heat waves coming off him, and I was like, oh, shoot, maybe they're going to do it. And as the fight continued to progress, I was like, where is it? It's nowhere to be found. It literally just seems like I said, they made the Hulk, turned him red, let him loose. They did not do a good job in the execution of the Red Hulk, whereas the design was great, the execution was very flawed in my opinion. On the flip side, and this is now my con number 2, whereas I think the design of the Red Hulk was great, his execution was poor. Remember, I said the execution of the leader was great. His design was terrible. His design was horrible. I know sometimes in movies like these, you need to take liberties with some comic-related things, especially something as simple as design and costume, because unfortunately there are some things that don't translate well to live action that might look good on a comic screen, or on a comic page, rather. I don't know why they chose the leader's design the way it is. I feel like the leader's design in the comics, which is just big head, big green head, would have translated fine. But instead they morphed him into like this very uncomfortable to look at thing where like it seemed like one of his eyes was like rolled back and blind. His brains were like, his head was just like weird looking, which again, big head, but it just didn't feel right to me. It was weird. I didn't like the design of the leader, and I've seen many people on the internet tend to agree with that take so far. All right, my third con for this movie is, again, a little nitpicky because I do think people tend to point out things like this, especially things like CGI, a little too frequently. It can be a little nitpicky, but in this case, I feel like there is some truth to it. Some of the action sequences, especially early on in the movie, didn't look outstanding. I think a consistent criticism that I've heard of Christian Bale's Batman and his fight sequences is sometimes it looked like he was dancing. I think the same can be said of some of the early fights in Captain America Brave New World, especially with Sam Wilson. It looked, obviously it's choreographed because it's a movie, but it's not supposed to look choreographed. It's not supposed to look like a dance, and some of those fights look like a dance. They look like they flowed a little too well instead of being the abrupt and rugged action that fighting someone actually looks like. It's not supposed to look like a perfect flow and a perfect it's not supposed to look like that. I don't want to see two people on Dancing with the Stars when I'm watching an action sequence, and sometimes that's what it looked like to me. Action sequences early on in the movie, not that great. I will say, and perhaps I should have added this as a pro, but I'll add it now. I feel like the final fight sequence was one of the best qualities of the movies as well. I feel like they did a good job at explaining how Falcon was able to beat the Hulk, because that was one of my initial concerns walking into this movie is, oh my gosh, I hope he just doesn't straight up beat him, which he did, but they did it well. Because if you remember, with the technology of vibranium, especially with Sam having the vibranium wings, they absorb the kinetic energy of something. Red Hulk was wailing and hitting those wings probably like 20 or 30 punches in a row. Those wings are just absorbing all of the kinetic energy of the Hulk's punches and combining it into one massive blast. So essentially, the Red Hulk momentarily knocked out the Red Hulk. That's how I kind of looked at it, and I feel like they did a good job at that. without jumping into some weird other explanation on how a Falcon, a regular dude, was able to take down the Red Hulk. That action sequence was great. Early on in the movie, not so much. And my final criticism for this movie, or at least my main ones that I'm going to be talking about today, they didn't make me care about the new Falcon. They introduced him, which I don't really know why. Just because Sam Wilson is now also Captain America doesn't mean he can't continue to be Falcon. Because the new Falcon just does what he does without the shield. They didn't make me care about that character pretty much at all. Another spoiler alert for the movie. The new Falcon did get injured in a dogfight scene. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I don't really care, you know. And I do think that was a flaw of this movie, is I just genuinely did not care about that character. They did not make me feel anything for him. Did not make me attach myself to him as I appreciate this new character. He's so well done. He was just kind of there. There were even times where I forgot he was in the movie if he wasn't standing next to Sam Wilson. Yeah, overall, not the best introduction of a new character. Well, those are my main pros and main cons of this movie. Like I said, I do give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. There's going to be a bunch of people, even far bigger creators than me, that tell you this movie's terrible. I think that's not fair. I think that's very unfair. There's so many people today that try to be movie savants and act like their taste is just so elegant and elevated. I went into this movie expecting to see a superhero fight a giant CGI monster, and hopefully he looked good, and hopefully the plot was pretty good, and I feel like it delivered on that. I feel like 7.5 is a reasonable score for this movie because it is good, but it's also kind of mid. It's somewhere in that middle ground where it's not bad, it's not good, it's kind of mid. But yeah, let me know, drop your pros, drop your cons down in the comments. Let me know what you would rate the movie. And thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.